All right. Hi there, everyone. Back here at the podcast. Very excited today to have a good friend of mine called David Cage, or David Caggiari is that actual name, but everyone knows him as David Cage because it's a little bit easier for us non-Italian speaking folk. I met David actually working for EF Education First. He was then one of our star tour directors. But he has done many other things, and that's what we're going to get into today. But I'm going to let you, David, start off by introducing yourself and letting people know who you are and where you're at in life at the moment.
Oh man, Nick, first of all, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. It's a great opportunity to see you again. I'm really honored for you to have me on your show, man. Thanks so much. So that said, I'm a bit of a hybrid person, really. I grew up and lived all over Europe. We have many things in common, in fact, me and yourself, Nick. We are kind of global citizens and wanderers of this earth. So my mum is British. My father is from Sardinia in Italy. You see how I was very specific there.
Sardinian, not Italian.
As we know, yeah. And I was born in Sutton Coldfield, so a little bit of a Brummie, but I never really lived there. I lived in Italy, I lived in Luxembourg, I lived in Belgium. Then I moved to Brighton. I went to Sussex University. After which, I decided to move to London and pursue a music career, which is not as simple as I first thought, actually. So it's weird because my parents always told me, David, you make sure you've got a good education. They always made that effort for me. And looking back, I'm very thankful. And now having children like yourself, it's something that I really appreciate, that it's actually come in handy later on in life. At the time, I was like, what am I doing here? I feel so much in limbo, people are holding me up. My legs are running and I can't touch the floor. And so once I got to London, I started a band. And we have this one thing in common, Nick, because I started a band at the same time as your cousin. Chris Peck, which actually is it's one of my best friends in the world. So, and it was his birthday not so long ago too. So that's happy birthday, Chris.
Yeah, happy birthday, mate.
I hope you didn't forget, Nick. Did you forget?
No, of course not. Of course not.
It's on Facebook. So that was my first real foray in the real world. So we kind of grew up in a cocoon. Maybe you kind of become king of your hill at your school. You're kind of popular, maybe. But then you go into the big bad world and you're staring up at the mountain. You're going, oh my goodness, can I do this? And that many times becomes probably the pivotal moment in your life where you realize, actually, I should fly down a little bit. I should, take this seriously. Some people don't. I definitely had to. And I took, let's say, me trying to succeed in music as very serious. So, for some people, music is, I'd say, a hobby, and it's a wonderful hobby. It really fills your soul with great, joy and happiness. And it also does other people when they hear you, hopefully. But at the same time, being a musician and being in the music industry are two totally different things. And I realize that. And if you go into the details, if you go in deep and realize and try and look into all the things that entails, sometimes maybe if I would have known now, I might have not even tried. Sometimes you have to go into things blind, if you know what I mean, Nick. Do you know?
I do know what you mean. Yeah.
So if I could, for example, sometimes people ask me, would you do it again? The same way, I was like, hell no, of course not. I wouldn't do. I mean, unless, of course, it brings me to this moment, and I have my beautiful son and wife, and it's obviously I'm very thankful where I'm at in my life. But if you have the same understanding of how things work later on in life, and if you could go back and speak to yourself, obviously you'd give yourself some, good nudges in the right direction, because life is just, for me, it was at least a lot of trial and error, and not giving up.
So I think I want to get deeper into that, and I obviously do want to know your thoughts on the difference between being in music and in the music industry. But just to give a little more context to those who aren't familiar with you, so you started a band in the UK, right? And you had some success with that band, but also you were a successful artist as well beyond that. So just talk us a little bit more around your music career as it went along.
Sure.
Because I just
Sure.
to interrupt
So
myself, just to interrupt you again, you're also so one of the ways that we actually properly connected was in an epic karaoke moment where I thought I was killing Living on a Prayer, and in steps Dave and completely crushes my spirit by completely outclassing me. But then I realized it doesn't really matter because the karaoke is all about the energy you put in, and I was still crushing it. But yeah, I realized very quickly David was a proper singer and artist, and I am well, maybe we should just leave it at proper karaoke specialist. Anyway,
no, but I remember it. I remember it like it was yesterday, actually. And, you know, what better song really to go all out on, you know, Living on a Prayer? Because that high note, I'm going to say, I did, you know, you carried me, let's say, as far as the performance was concerned, because I was kind of going, well, I'm doing karaoke. But I might have carried you on the higher notes, maybe.
100% you did. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted myself just because I had to give context. But let's hear more about your music career, not mine.
So I'll just very quick. I graduated from university. I did my job, you know, that my parents asked me to do, and then I moved to London, started a band. It wasn't easy in the beginning. I would be working probably 6 days a week, 9 to 5, and rehearsing. Well, to live in London, obviously, paying rent and all the rest. And I'd be rehearsing 4 days a week, 7 to 11. And then going out and meeting people. Those were the 3 things that I needed to do. I need to hone in on my craft. I needed to live, eat, pay rent, hone in on my art. So actually, that's the most important part. Become a good singer, good musician, good songwriter. And third thing was networking. The more people you know, the more doors open, really, I guess. And I was probably a man about town in the early noughties or zeros. And it was full on, 100%. I took it very seriously. And we started this band called Apartment. Eventually, we were signed to Universal. We got the second highest advance that year. And we were kind of like underground darlings of London. There was one moment where, you know, I guess we were on every radio, XFM, you know, radio, BBC playlists. You know, we were doing the exposure. I remember that, amazing. Like, just it's brilliant. Hearing for the first time your song on the radio is a truly, truly magical moment. But that's when it really hits you. Industry really hits you. What's needed in order to succeed? And if I tell you the list of people that are in your pocket, it's pretty crazy. I mean, just going from the manager, then to the PR person. So at national level, also at regional level. Then there's the plugger at national, regional, international level. Then there's the person that does your publishing. Then there's the person that does your record deal. Then there's the, you know, it just goes on and on. There's your producer. There's, you know, it's such, and then it's your tour manager. There's, you know, your sound engineer, your guitar tech. And so we started touring, and it was wonderful. You know, going throughout Europe, being like support bands for great bands like, you know, Jimmy Eat World, you know, The Killers, The Bravery. We played with many, many great bands, Hot Hot Heat, but indie bands at the time. And, you know, sleeping in vans, just doing it the, you know, the old school way. But it was a real cusp moment for us where it was going from the kind of CD version to the digital. The first time really that downloads started counting. It kind of changed the industry as well. People didn't know where, you know, things were kind of lying. Money was coming in less and less from record sales. So so record labels were trying to cash in more and, you know, kind of a 360 deal. When you get a 360 deal, that means that before a record label would just sign you as an artist and take money on your record sales. Now that record sales are gone, they're going to sign you on a 360 deal. That means they're going to take money from your, for example, from your merch, you know, from your touring, from your publishing. Normally you'd have a publisher as well, because publishing is, let's say, the song itself. So radio play, airwaves, adverts, that kind of thing. Well, records is just the physical sales of CDs. But then again, in the past, artists would be, for example, just you know, making their own merch and making 100% profit on that, and taking 100% profit of any extra money that would come out of touring, because you've got to understand, touring has got a big expense behind it. Imagine you're taking a sleeper bus and your, four band, four crew, and a sleeper bus costs you £1,000 a day. If your gigs bring back £600 that day, you're cutting into every day you're minus 400 every day, and it goes into your recoupable, and are you going to pay it back? It's quite complicated. And there's hundreds of bands competing. We were part of that MySpace era where everybody and anybody could really be, let's say, doing their thing, which on one side is very, very cool, and I adore. But on the other side, as a signed artist, it's just tougher, really, to pay everybody, because there's one pocket that gets paid out of, and it's always yours. And you do get quite a lot of people that come in and go in trying to, let's say, leech off or just kind of ride on your coattails for that little bit of a moment. And it's all unfair. We had an amazing manager, by the way. Our manager, a guy called Jack Stephen, he worked with the Rolling Stones. He signed Sade, Terence Trent D'Arby, started the record label Ministry of Sound, Jamiroquai, Florence and the Machine. So we were really lucky to have an amazing person at the helm of our band. And I love him like a father to this day. And he helped me greatly. And that's a great thing also. Along the way, birds of a feather flock together. And like us, I guess. Yeah. And you tend to stick with those people for quite some time.
So I think it's fascinating hearing how much depth there is. Of course, I mean, I guess I've never been in that world. I know I saw my cousin, as you mentioned, Chris. He's also an artist like yourself, and he talked a bit about it. But that time frame as well, where there was a lot more piracy, I guess, going on as well when it went to digital, and so the whole industry got disrupted. I guess from the perspective of win building and where I'm interested in it all as well, is how do you construct that win, and how does that then adapt and change? Because I guess for a long time as a recording artist, as you were in that time, that the record deal was probably the holy grail. That was the moment you're like, yes, got it. But then I'm guessing, so you can confirm or deny, but then it's beyond that. It's like, oh shit, there's this whole avalanche of other stuff going on, and now commitments to meet and people to please and things like that. So I mean, how do you know, what was, if I'm right, first of all, about that record deal, but then beyond that, how do you then construct the win, or how do you then think through what next? How does the strategy work? How did you adapt in that time where all of those things were changing? The digital sales were coming in, the 360 deals were coming in.
That's a great question, because the thing is, you've got to look at how complex the model is. So the model that you're in front of in order to achieve that win. Once you start working with many, many people, those things start to slip out of your hands in some way. So we're talking about, if the win is getting the record deal, that you're looking at that model in order to get to that win, and you're saying, okay, I need to do this, 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 and this, and you seem to be more in control because it's a smaller goal. But without that goal, you can't go on to the bigger win, right? Once you get to the bigger win, it's a more complex model. There's more people around you that you have to coordinate. You kind of get lucky as well. Luck is the luck factor is very important. So we can talk about that as well if you want. Got to make your own luck as well. But anyway, my point is, in the record industry, to have a win, there's thousands of ways to do it. For example, Bruce Springsteen didn't break until his third album. In today's world, Born to Run was his third album. In today's world, no artist would get that chance. You have one go at it, one album, and that's it. If you break, you're on. If you make it, you're on. If you break, then it's over. Nobody will ever be nurtured by record labels, majors, the way that they were in the past, because frankly, the record sales are just not there to support them. Instead, how people should try and find longevity is by taking flight from the ground, not because very much what happens, and this is what happened to, I think it happened more to your cousin's band, Boy Kill Boy, because they were on a much bigger deal than us. They were on a multi, Island Def Jam, multi, international deal. had a big money push behind them. It's kind of just saying, okay, now chicks, we're going to fly, but from the 12th story, level of this building, you know what I mean? It's like, let's go. And then if you don't manage to take flight, it's splash.
It's pretty brutal.
Well, it's pretty brutal, yeah. Well, on the other hand, for example, there's great bands that have been doing records forever, but they've managed to do it in a very kind of independent, grassroots kind of way, and I think that's more healthy in today's. If you're making music that's more artistic, obviously, it's more healthy in today's world. And I think a lot of the great ones of today that are kind of sticking around and that have niche markets, they tend to do it their own way. But yeah, again, it becomes out of your hands, that win, and that's what was so frustrating, Nick. I could see it slipping away, because obviously we didn't do a second album. Our first album came along. It was way too late by then. People had, it took us way too long to get through the whole machination of getting signed, getting known, recording go away and recording it. And when we're back, it's just, they've moved on. Oh, Apartment done an album. Oh, great. It's a good album, but we're moved on to this band now. And so this is the thing. In music, you have to have, for example, a very well set out plan beforehand. So imagine somebody for example, Parlophone knows when Coldplay's next album is coming out, 6 to probably 12 months beforehand. And 6 to 12 months beforehand, they've already prepared all the groundwork for what will be released when. The pluggers will get this thing to do. It'll be in conjunction with that movie. It'll be in conjunction with this. So it's a real, it's a very complex model that they have to follow, and they know that they can project already that Parlophone knows that it'll make that amount of money because there's a Coldplay album this year. They have bands like that probably pays all the bills, so that's really how it goes in the music industry. It's pretty scary, actually, really scary.
Yeah, it's incredible, actually, and it's also incredible to think I guess a lot of people probably in their heart understand it, but they look at rock stars and the like and think, oh, they don't work that hard, they just go around being gorgeous and singing on stage, and then they live this life of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I've known a couple of artists beyond you and my cousin, actually, and oh my God, you guys, the grind and the hard work that goes into it. Of course, there's some fun and things, but it's also there's a lot of scope for burnout with having to perform over and over again and practice. I think one of the main reasons I love this story around the band is it's a team effort as a band as well, and there's also that sort of working together to get the songs right together to deliver the performance on the day. I talk about a lot of this with sport, and I use a lot of analogies from sport, but for me, putting in a great performance with a band, it has got to be as good as performing, as a sports team in the grand final. If you go out on stage and absolutely nail the performance, the euphoria you feel, it must be enormous as a team.
Yes, and it becomes also quite an abstract experience in the sense that you can't ever say, oh, we did this, and this, and that's why it was good. Yeah. Sometimes there's no reason why it was good. You can't really understand and pinpoint why it was good. Artistic performances, I think they grow with time. They grow also. They become a great artist is, I would say. A great artist doesn't get on stage and play. It just gets on stage. And, at the time we had ripped jeans because I'd snagged them and I wore the same jeans for weeks. I had just skinny jeans with rips in them, and they weren't ripped because I bought them from H&M ripped. We're just ripped because I just had no money at the time and we were touring and they got ripped. And I thought, oh, who cares? It looks cool. But that's how it happens. Our bass player would have we started as normal people, but eventually you get on the road and the road grows onto you, and you start just doing this thing where you're just playing every night, and you're becoming every night, just becoming this band. And that's why, for example, again, sorry, I'll come back to Bruce Springsteen. He needed 3 albums to become Bruce Springsteen. He just became Bruce Springsteen. There's manufacturing art is a tricky thing. It can be cool. I mean, there are things, the 80s were very, very cool in some respects, aesthetically. But I have to say, if you're trying to make something that is true, and what does true mean? It's something that I've struggled with a lot. So trying to find your true voice, trying to find just yourself, looking inwards, especially if you're going to write something. So anybody can really understand this. Anybody that puts their heart and soul into something, they want it to have a part of them in it. And you have to, first of all, understand, who the hell are you? You see, and that's really tough. Who are you? And how is that? How are you going to translate that into this? So I think when you become you, you don't really realize it. And that's the great part of it, and if you're ever in a moment thinking I'm in the moment, you're not in the moment.
Yeah, you're spending too much time thinking about being in the moment.
I know, exactly.
Yeah. And I think
it sounds strange, but
I don't think it does sound strange. I totally relate, and I think it's for me, growing over time and developing and becoming more introspective, and understanding. The older I get, the more I feel I realize how much I don't know, and I respect more and more the wisdom of my parents and the wisdom of older people, because they've just seen so many more years of everything than we have. And that's, I mean, it's an obvious statement, but you don't spend a lot of the time thinking about it. When you're a teenager, you think you know everything because you've got there, you've worked it out, and you think no one understands technology like I do. And my parents are always asking me for help with it. Then you get older and you realize, oh, they've been through these life experiences that I'm now having. And, it still continues in the 40s. I'm now like, oh, these things will have happened to my parents, and they'll have just watched me grow and develop. And I totally get it. So becoming, as you mentioned, becoming, especially in art, I guess, as you are developing as an artist as well, that must be sort of extra difficult, because you're developing your skill and talent and art as you grow as well. And that's like, how does that balance out, I guess, is a tricky question. But I want to ask you then, so given that you've talked about art and you talked about how manufacturing art is very challenging, you then went and competed on The Voice, right?
Yeah.
In Belgium.
I did, yeah.
So tell me about that, because that is the ultimate in manufactured. And I guess you did that after your experience with the band. So talk to me about that. What was the decision process in that? And I know you did very well with it as well. So talk to me around that and that experience and why you did it and how it helped you learn more about yourself.
So, yes, I see it as two totally different things. One thing is making music. The other thing is being on The Voice. Although music is part of The Voice, it in a way kind of had nothing to do with it. In a way, it was more of an experience for me. Obviously, I did it at a much later age. I did it when I was 35, so 7 years ago, and it was out of kind of, I think my sister said, oh, they're doing auditions for The Voice. Do you want to try it? And you do a thing online first, you have to sing online. I sang online for fun. And then they call you and I'll go, come on, just for fun. I'll go see it. I'll go see how it works. And you go in the room and you play in front of 4 people staring at you like this. And then you play, and there's no clapping or anything, and then you leave. And then they call you again and like, oh, well, must have done okay. I'll go again. Come on. And they do an interview and they find out about you. Then, okay. And then they go, okay, so we're going to try 3 songs. You have to choose 3 songs. So, Okay. So I go back and we do the 3 songs. And then they say, okay, yeah. So you've been chosen to feature at least, come and record on The Voice. So then you go. But I mean, so each night of The Voice is 10. It's like a gig in a way. You've got 10 artists, and to credit The Voice in Belgium, because I obviously did The Voice in Belgium. To its credit, I could see it was a very fair and transparent competition. I know that it works differently. I know that for a fact, by the way. It works differently in bigger countries But Belgium, because it's a smaller country, and really the win at the end of it is not that big, really, to be honest. It's just you kind of, I mean, you win a car, that's fine, that's great. Ooh, I'd love a car, but so you have this gig, 10 people, and I was the last one. They kind of put me as the big ending, I guess. I don't know why, because they knew that they could see I was a seasoned performer, and I got there, and I just rocked it. I rocked it, and it was weird because I didn't play. I learned so much. I played to the room. And then eventually, as as I advanced through the competition, I realized I've got to play to the bloody room. I've got to play to the red dot with the cameras, Yeah. So all of a sudden, you're playing just to a machine, and you feel really detached from like knowing that you're in somebody's TV, in somebody's front room. They're drinking, their cup of tea, their, verveine or something, their fennel-infused digestive tea. And you're kind of going, whoa, you gotta start thinking about this. You're thinking actually they need something a little bit more smaller. I was used to having to be big because I was on a stage. All of a sudden, I'm having to perform here and there, right there, looking at you into your room. And that was a very, very different experience. I learned a lot. I learned that technically, which was very interesting to me. Secondly, obviously, I saw the bad parts, the bad side. I'm sure you're kind of interested because I being 35 and having kind of done it a bit, I could see all the 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds that really put all their hope into this one experience. And I kind of became a little bit the big brother or uncle of all of them. We still stay in touch, and I kind of created a team spirit and an understanding of like, this is not music. This is a TV show, just take it for what it is, enjoy it for what it is. And others went on to make really good music. One of them, in fact, Antoine just went to 7 years later, just did The Voice in France and got to the last two. And he's absolutely adored in France now. And I remember him being really kind of under my wing, and it's really nice to see him shine now. It's his time. Yeah, it's wonderful.
It is very interesting to think about the change in the singing to a room versus singing to a red dot, and how your performance must have to change with that. But in terms of competing for the art as well, did that feel strange to you? Like compared to, I guess before with the band, it was the long-term competition of kind of achieving, the contract and then achieving tours, presumably, and things like that. With the TV competition, it's one end date. The final goes on the TV on that date, and you're kind of what was it voted for by the viewers, or was it voted for by the people? I don't even know the voice.
No.
My wife, I should bring my wife in. She's the expert in all these things.
No. So I'm part of a team. And well, first of all, you sing, then they turn their chairs, which is really weird. You start playing the four backs of people, and all of a sudden you hear psh, psh. And it's funny because on the TV you kind of, it's an event when he goes psh, and in turn, instead in real life you don't even realize you're just playing your song, so okay, somebody went psh, and then they have to kind of try and lure you into their team, which was very funny. I'd say one of my let's say my episode was quite funny because I did something a little bit strange. In the end, I chose the person that turned first because I said, "Who turned first?" And they said, "Then it's you." And they hated me for it because I said I wanted to keep it down to destiny, so whoever turns first wins, and then there were, that means they heard something for the first. They took the first chance. It's easy to turn when everybody else has turned. You know what I mean? Well, maybe you're not sure, but anyway, for me that meant something. And anyway, so that was What was I? I think I was saying
you were talking about the difference.
The where the voting goes, right? So afterwards, it is pure voting in. So being not Belgian for me was very tough because I didn't have a city. I didn't have a, I know some of my friends, the guy that won it, for example, came from a little village where every one of his, performances was greeted by, a town fair kind of thing. Everybody sat around a big screen and everybody had 2 mobile phones and it was By the way, I have thousands of posters and flyers in my garage downstairs, which if anybody wants to hit me up, because I'm never going to use them. But then again, I used to give them out on tours with EF from time to time. You know about that, right? I
didn't know about that actually, but that's something. So I want to switch and talk about that actually, because we're not. So I don't work with EF anymore, and I think you no longer work with EF either, right?
Oh no, I do. I have wonderful group leaders that I work with throughout.
Okay. So you can't say anything controversial about EF, and I can now make some people, if they're ever going to listen to this, very nervous about what I'll say next. I'm just kidding. So no, but when we were working with EF. So EF, for those that don't know, is a very large education organization. Has hundreds of language schools in China, Indonesia, Russia. Also has many language schools around the world in English-speaking destinations of France and Spain, Spanish speaking, etc., where students travel to go and study in those places. It also has it has a big business school, and it has loads and loads of Americans traveling on tours, mainly around Europe, but actually they go all around the world. So there's loads going to Australia, Costa Rica, whatever. I'm not advertising for them, but I worked for them for 14 years, so I know a lot about the company. And I had the good fortune to work with the tour directors part, which is about 1,400 tour directors in the world, I think, and about 1,000 of them in Europe. And I was working in quite a complicated project with a lot of tour directors at the same time that David was basically starting as a tour director with EF. So he was coming in fresh-faced and full of energy, full of zest. Yeah. And we were in a changing time where we were trying to really focus hard on providing educational experiences for the tours, because the main thing about the tours is there'll be a lot of high school students going on a tour from, like, for example, London, Paris, Rome, and they'll do 12, 14 days seeing those places and visiting those sites. And of course, what we were trying to do was make those come alive with educational experiences. So that's to give you context on why David was, and I worked quite closely together, because David was very interested in all of that and obviously interested in being a part of that. But with his charisma and his skills in language and just his natural performance style as well, I think, well, I'll talk to you, David. I'm sort of introducing this to the people.
Yeah, please, thank you.
With all of that, you, Mr. Humble, I think that was what really, really worked well, and why you were very, very popular with a lot of the people, especially in management and in the staff of EF centrally, but also with other tour directors as well. I know that you ruffled some feathers as well in the tour director community, and in fact, there was the fact that we had a common. My cousin, we had that in common. That was also somewhat controversial somehow at one point. It was
the kind of, what's it called? It was conspiracies.
Conspiracies. There we go. Yeah,
the QAnon of our day, by the way.
Exactly.
The QAnon of our day. David is doing this tour because he is Nick's far cousin. I was like,
yeah, exactly.
I've just met Nick. We have lots in common.
We were secret lovers, even though neither of us are gay, and both of us were happily in a relationship.
Hey. So this is the thing. I think that again, it's what gets you to the dance in many ways. But at the same time, when you, I saw maybe we were both in a same kind of, in the same waters in many ways. Also, let it be said, you were the big cheese. You were the big cheese.
No, I wasn't.
You were the big cheese. I know you say you weren't the big cheese, but I mean, for us tour directors, okay, you were kind of put on a very, very important spot, a very difficult spot. To this day, I honor you for the job that you did. It was a very, very tough job. I think you did it in a very skilled way. I think you did it also in a way that that was very empathic, which is great honor to you. So there you go. That's the most important thing, I think. And for me at the same time, that's why again, I connected with the people in the management, for example, many times more than I did, for example, with some of my, let's say, peers, because I tried to put myself in their shoes. And if we all did that, if we all kind of had the empathy of towards, I understand the job that you're doing and you understand the job that I'm doing, and let's be fair to each other, at that point, that's where you really find, common ground and you can go forward. If everybody just fights their own ground and, this is my last stand, we're never going to get anywhere. So I'm always of the thought you try and make the best of what you have, and times change and things need to move on. And I've always concentrated, I don't know about you, but I've never looked for paved roads. I've just concentrated on building the proper car that goes on all the roads. You know what I'm saying? Whatever road comes my way, if it's a 4x4, I know that I can, I've put time into my 4x4. I know that I can go down this road.
Yeah.
And this is a bit what's happening. This is a bit what's, sorry, Tom.
No, I think I'm interested to know more about, because it was clear to me that you were being, and I talk about strategy, but I know you maybe didn't think of it as strategy at the time, but I think you played very well your position and your opportunity, and people may hear that and be like, well, so Nick's saying David was playing a game and whatever, but I think you showed, like you've just said, you showed interest in trying to understand what the company was trying to achieve and what the management were trying to achieve, but you also tried to think, how can I help that achieve, how can I help that happen? And I often say to people when I get, when I'm coaching and things like that, I often, and even just when I'm managing people, I say, manage your manager, because if you're not achieving what your manager wants you to achieve, then there's really no point. And in fact, my manager now is listening. He listens to the podcast. I'm not sure he'll listen to this one or not, but it'll be funny if he is, because it's ironic. But managing your manager is very important, because you've got to make sure you're achieving what they want to achieve as well. Otherwise, it's pointless. And that was the same. I saw that you doing that with your position in EF and you as a tour director, and that I think is why you did so well, because you won people over. I wonder, and my question to you is, how much of that do you think came from your experience having been an artist in an apartment in the band and having to kind of please lots of people in different positions and different ways, and to try to make sure you were meeting the goals of lots of different stakeholders? You mentioned all the different people you had to work with. How do you think any of that relates at all from your experience, or do you think there was something else that was affecting it?
No, that's a very good question. I think, look, when you say Machiavellian, people say you're being Machiavellian. Is that a bad thing or is that a good thing? Depends on if you're being a hypocrite or not. And many times the word hypocrite gets a bad rep. What does being a hypocrite mean? So I don't put so much pressure on myself to kind of try and, try and be, again, I want to use the word Machiavellian, I want to use hypocrite, I want to use integrity. Those are three things that can sometimes be at odds with each other, right? That's what they say. That's what they say. But integrity means that you know exactly who you are. And I do not know who I am. I am a constantly, I'm a being that's constantly changing and mutating. Like you, I want to learn. I want to grow. When I came to EF, I totally changed my career in many ways. And I used what I had in one part of the thing that I learned, and I used it there. And I know now all the mistakes that I made. Again, if I could go back, I wouldn't say this thing, I wouldn't do that thing. And I would have learned to, again, shut my mouth here. You've got to learn when to speak. All of these things helped me greatly, for example, for my next step. So then I moved, now I work for the Travel Corporation in Trafalgar. And at Trafalgar and Travel Corporation, I was able to play my cards that I knew that were in my favor without ruffling the feathers that I did in EF. Mm-hmm. It's just very much like my first girlfriend laid the grounds for my second girlfriend, that laid the grounds for my third girlfriend, that eventually laid the grounds for my wife. And today, some things I don't argue, and I don't say, and some things I appreciate more because I know of my past. So this is the thing. If you're going to just go through life saying, I have integrity and I am like this, in a way, you're kind of saying, this is the way that I'm made. There's no way that I would ever say that. I'm always in wonder of what I'm going to be in the future without really knowing it. Well, only when I look back, I go, oh, actually, I changed from that to that and to that, to that, to that, to that. And I think we're very similar in that way because we're not, it actually comes with being not as, people might think that we are kind of, we think a lot about, with a lot of ourselves, okay? But that's really, that's a motor within us that gets us to do things. And we have to be like that, but we're constantly kind of looking inwards and maybe kind of trying to learn from our mistakes and moving on. That's exactly how I am. I'm in motion. I'm not static. And so, although, you know, some parts of the chapter of your book talk about failure, and that's very interesting to me. Failure is one of the greatest things that can happen to me. It's when I learn, when I'm in discomfort. I know I'll be moving on a little bit, but for example, exactly a year ago, I started Brazilian Ju Jitsu.
I knew we'd get here. I have to say this, so I have to interrupt you. I knew we'd get here because you've become one of those, but you're like a CrossFitter or a vegan. You have to, like with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But my concern, and I knew we'd get here, is I'm going to be a wannabe Joe Rogan at this point, because now we're in a podcast where Jiu-Jitsu comes up. So I was laughing because I was like, I know I want to talk to David about Jiu-Jitsu, but I don't want to be a wannabe Joe Rogan. I mean, I'd love to be as successful as Joe Rogan, but okay. Well, so anyway, sorry. Yeah. A year ago, you started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
So like yourself, I'm a Joe Rogan fan. And obviously we've heard about Jiu-Jitsu many times through Joe Rogan. And obviously I was watching Jiu-Jitsu for many years, following mixed martial arts. And it was probably the part of mixed martial arts that interested me the most because it was the more cerebral kind of chess game of physiques. You know, the story of Royce Gracie being, you know, a 170-pound, you know, kind of accountant-looking guy killing choking out all these really big dudes. It kind of appealed to me. So anyway, on my 41st birthday, I gave myself the present of going to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The day after, it was my birthday a couple of days ago. The day after, I went to my first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class. It's part of a team here called Icon Team, and my professor is an amazing, amazing black belt called Pablo Serino, who's also become a good friend of mine. And it's absolutely changed my life. I lost 2 stone. I feel way more energetic.
You have to give that in kilos.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So I lost 12 kilos.
12 kilos.
I lost 12
wow.
kilos. Yeah.
Okay.
I lost 12 kilos. I feel way stronger. My brain works in so much better. I apply jiu-jitsu now to everything I do all the time. And it's become an absolute passion of mine. The way that, in a way, it's the way that kind of music made me feel alive. Jiu-jitsu makes me feel alive.
That is awesome. Wow.
Yeah. And and there's no doubt that I'm going to go all the way throughout my life now doing jiu-jitsu. And you know, I'm a 2-stroke white belt now, so watch out. I might, but there's nothing better really than I would say understanding. First of all, it's a mental exercise. Being underneath a person that's squashing your head, and you have to try and survive and breathe and be relaxed and get out of it and put limbs in place so that you can move on to your next position is something that is absolutely brilliant. And at the same time, you sweat, you become really strong. You learn how to master your own body. You learn how to do things that I could see, my son doing as a small child. I forgot how to do those things. We forget how to be, how to move our bodies. We become stuck in sitting in chairs or, running, or there's positions that we should know. And yeah, so it's
great
amazing.
for your core strength as well. I mean, I'm 100, so we talked about it a while ago. I noticed you were posting about it, and I wrote to you and I said, I really want to try it. For my 40th birthday, my wife, Louisa, bought me boxing lessons, actually, when we were living in Switzerland, I think at the time. But then I did boxing for a while, which was really cool, except the second the second time I went there, they were like, right, put your gum shields in. And I was like, what? And I did have a gum shield. So I was like, okay. And then they're like, right, we're going to spar. And I'm like, what? And I suddenly, find myself in front of this guy who's a very experienced guy, and he punches me in the face. And I'm like, oh, that really hurt. And I thought I thought, well, I did kind of sign up for boxing, I guess. But so anyway, I learned a bit, but I was still, not that experienced in it. And I really enjoyed it because it's a great cardio. But I got heavily into Joe Rogan, listening to Joe Rogan, and also following some of the other people. This guy called Lex Friedman, who I think is amazing, who talks about, he's nothing to do with jiu-jitsu, except that he talks about it all the time as well on his podcast. So I'm really,
you would
really
be in a fish in water.
However, COVID has kind of screwed that up for us. So I'm here in Oslo now, and none of the places are open right now. So so that's a bit of a challenge. But I will, once I get a chance to do it here, I'm going to start, because I was in Hong Kong and there was a lot of things changing for us, and there was a lot of things going on. So I didn't have I make excuses, but I really didn't have much opportunity to get on learning jiu-jitsu. So I am committed to trying it, and I'll follow you, and I'll come and get squashed by you at some point.
Well, that's for sure. But the thing is this, you see, so I also threw myself straight into competing as well. Yeah, I think you can see a bit of red on my face there.
Oh yeah.
So this is the great thing about jiu-jitsu compared to boxing. In no way is your brain and your, let's say, consciousness compromised in what you would call, I'd say, when you fight.
Yeah.
But reality is that you don't fight jiu-jitsu, you play jiu-jitsu. You're a jiu-jitsu player. And jogar, that's they call them in Brazil, and you get to know the whole history. And it's a constantly evolving art form. There's new movements, there's new things that are becoming vogue, others that, are old school things that stop working, things that start working. And so this is what I like. I like the fact that my brain, my understanding of where I'm at is not compromised by being smacked in the face. Okay. So you see, because it's a different story. Instead, it's like you have to level up your body as well, and level up your understanding in order to, let's say, to submit or survive. Because the first thing that you'll have to do when you start jiu-jitsu is survive. And the white belt is called the survival belt. Although it's true, it's called the survival belt. Although with time, you're submitted by everybody. And then you carry on, and then 2 months come along, 3 months, a new guy comes in and you submit him. And then all of a sudden you start being competitive with somebody who's been doing it 6 months further than you.
Yeah.
And then so on and so forth. For example, I made a great friend in jiu-jitsu. He's the same age as me. We have both children of the same age. But when I came, he was the person that I feared the most. Alan, it's you. He's Irish. He looks like Conor McGregor, actually, big beard, tattoos. He's been doing, obviously, he's a fighter. And no way am I a fighter. I mean, at least visually, you'd look at us and go, he's going to kick his ass, And so it was my great fear, and kind of overcoming my fear of like playing jiu-jitsu with Alan was a big thing. Now we've become best mates, and we're very kind of equal. We're in the sense that even we've competed against each other, and I submitted him in competition. but then I
watches this. You're bragging about it.
And then I paid for it in spades. And I think he broke. I think I had so you'll understand also. You will get injured. It's a 100% injury sport.
Right.
So for example, you have to really cut your nails. Like I've lost my nail. So this is Alan, knee on belly, and I think one of my I don't know what happened, but one of my ribs. Well, I think I must have broken a rib or something. So that kind of happens too. But you want to carry on, Your everywhere hurts. But the wonderful thing is, when it hurts, you know why.
Yeah,
that's what I like. I like it hurting if I know why it hurts. Oh yeah, I was in three fights of 5-minute rounds with big men yesterday. Obviously it hurts, So instead, if you do nothing and all of a sudden you're picking up, a bottle of water and your back hurts, you're like, oh God, what have I got? There's a reason. That's what I like about jiu-jitsu. It strengthens your brain, and because of it, it strengthens your body. And I've never been as manly in many ways as I have been now. So it's really great.
Yeah, that is. It's. I totally get it, and I think from that's. I think the main reason I want to do it is similar to what you've talked about before. You know, you said the sentence, "I want to learn, I want to grow," and I totally relate to that. I have exactly the same feelings. I think part of the reason I'm doing this podcast is just trying to understand, trying to learn, trying to grow, trying to challenge myself in a way, you know, put myself out there a bit and challenge myself in a way that's different, that I'm not entirely comfortable with. You know, I'm learning all the time on this. And I think I try and do that with everything. So I'm often challenging myself to listen to points of view that I don't always agree with. And I've definitely, in my job when I was working with you, I had to listen to all of the, how should I say this politely, very conservative right-wing sort of news outlets in the US, which I definitely wouldn't normally find myself taking interest in, I suppose. I feel like I'm probably, you know, if I have to label myself, I'm probably quite left, quite liberal, and in line with a lot of, well, for example, Norway, in line with a lot of the way the people live over here. But I had to listen to these things because of my job. But then it got me interested to sort of see how people are framing arguments, to see how people see things differently, and really challenge myself to think, well, am I being honest with myself? Do I really know this thing to be the truth? Or is it just that, you know, I feel like it's true and, you know, I really believe it's true? And there's a fine line between sort of, you know, you don't want to let go of your principles, but you also really need to challenge those principles sometimes to test them against themselves. And I feel that so strongly. I try and do that every day, and I see that similar to the jiu-jitsu, which is it's a physical form of that, you know, and I love that. So I try to keep fit. I've mentioned it before, I run, but I also I've got a punch bag I just bought the other day. I've got a punch bag outside, and I try and do different activities to keep my body, my engine running hard. But I think, yeah, I'm committed to this jiu-jitsu thing, mate. I'm definitely going to do it.
Can I just remembered why the segue into jiu-jitsu is because it was talking about your book and failure. And jiu-jitsu really, really relies on you accepting failure. It's you know what it is? It's a one failure after the other. You lose, and it's very strange. It's very strange. If you're not used to losing, jiu-jitsu can be very disheartening. But the reality is, every loss, if taken as a lesson, becomes money in the bank.
Yeah,
that's the great thing, and it's a massive reminder. Some people find no comfort in discomfort. The main thing that you have to learn in jiu-jitsu is finding comfort and clarity in discomfort. Yeah. You have somebody's chest in your face and they're trying to twist your arm, and you have to get out of it. You have to breathe. You have to think, okay, I need to put this pin here, scoot, try and find some air. You know, he's trying to do this with his leg at the same time. What he's doing is he's putting his shoulder into my throat so he can move his leg and go into side control. So you're thinking about these things, but you're in absolute pain and discomfort. Yeah. And that is you coping with, you know, with all these moments of failure, one upon the other. And then you look back and they've all served you so much because you've learned by them. You've paid the price so hard. And if this is one thing that I would say, if you really start thinking of jiu-jitsu as a video game, like it doesn't matter, just play, you know, it'll game over, boom, you tap, who cares? So I thank higher belts constantly because they will just tap me. They will just tap. I suffer for 5 minutes. But then, you know, that's when you really grow. When I'm with somebody who has just started and I'm playing with them like they're a doll, even if they weigh, you know, 20 kilos more than me, it's very strange. You'll have people with muscles come along, say, you know, oh, I'm strong. And then I'll arrive and I will dominate them for 5 minutes. It's very disheartening. They've never been dominated in their life, especially by this, you know, ex-musician. All of a sudden, if they get into the right, into the right mind frame, then they start thinking, okay, this is actually quite amazing. I've got a lot to got a lot to learn here, and that comes only from failure, really.
I totally go. Embracing your failures and understanding, like embracing them and understanding them. That's important. Like not just embracing them and saying, okay, well, great, I failed, but like what you're describing, growing from them as well. In fact, I get it. So I know a lot of people don't realize I'm actually recording these on and putting them on YouTube as well on video with permission. So hopefully I got your permission. So to make my thing more interesting, I bought some stuff to put in the background, and actually I bought some motivational stuff, and I'm just going to read this one. So it's from Rocky. It says, it ain't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, how much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. And I love that, because I was like, yeah. And I always get myself a little bit pumped up when I'm reading that. But listen, David, I'm going to wrap this one up, because I think it was a great conversation, and I love that we got to connect. And thank you so much for spending the time talking to me, man. It's been great. I hope everyone listening enjoyed that conversation. And I just want to say as well, for those of you who've stuck it out, thank you so much for the supportive comments that have been coming in, because it's not really like the sort of thing where you get likes and comments at podcasts, and I'm not doing it for that either, but it is really encouraging to get some messages. So I've had some nice messages from good friends of mine all around the world, actually, who are connecting and listening to these. So thanks so much for tuning in. And I've got a few more really cool people lined up as well. But David, thank you for being with me here. And mate, I really hope you get to squash my head one time soon enough.
You can count on that. You could put money on that.
Yeah, I'll come find you though. I'll just be careful, because I will come find you. I'll turn up on a whole lot of muscles, and then you'll.
It's fine. It's fine. It's good. It's okay.
All right.
I'll use no strength.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much. Take care, David.
All the best to the family, Nick. Okay.